First of all, the history of the last several decades has been one, let's say, go back to the 50s and 60s, where oil was $2, $3, $4 a barrel. The role of OPEC was played back then by the Texas Railroad Commission. The Texans did a very good job. We were driving, all of us, on 20, 25 cent a gallon gasoline. Life was good. Then the coming of the crises in the 70s, both the Yom Kippur War oil crisis and the one in '79 surrounding the collapse of the Shah and the takeover in Iran, and the boost in oil prices led in the Carter administration to an effort to move us off oil. Well, we didn't make much progress in moving off oil for transportation, but we did for electricity. Back in those days, about 20% of electricity on the mainland was generated by burning oil, as it is in Hawaii today. But the Carter administration's policies, some of which were picked up and followed by the Reagan administration, effectively moved us away from that. On the mainland now, well under 1% of electricity is generated by oil. Oil dominates transportation. 97% of transportation around the world is oil carried in one way or another, but not electricity production. There's a few scattered places around the world, but mainly it's here. And this has created a situation whereby, if we look at the problems oil creates, Hawaii is uniquely susceptible to them because of its dependence on oil for electricity as well as transportation. Oil completely dominates the energy of this beautiful set of islands.
Other states may have more aggressive goals for ramping up the use of renewable energy sources, but without a nuclear power plant in the islands and the availability of natural gas reserves, no state has a bigger gap to fill in order to diminish its use of petroleum.
Aloha, I'm Terry Okita, and thank you for joining us tonight for Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. Tonight's program begins our second year bringing this series to you through our partnership with the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. You just heard a brief summary of how we came to this crossroad in determining Hawaii's energy future and why Hawaii's challenges are unique to the U.S. mainland and just about any place in the world. Since we've been working on these programs for the past year, we've had an opportunity to speak with many people throughout our state about the challenges before us.
I see it as a real opportunity. An opportunity for us to create a better lifestyle for everyone in our island home. The reality of it is that, well, at least the financial picture of it is, that we do export a lot of cash to pay for our fossil fuel. And I think it's not just a money issue.
We recognize that having more sustainable development and construction in Hawaii is the key to our future. And while we advocate for the industry, we advocate for more jobs, and obviously that comes with construction. We also recognize that we are an island that has a limit of resources available to it, and it's finding the balance between creating those jobs, bringing good development to Hawaii, but also recognizing that we need to be more sustainable in how we build. We need to be more sustainable in where we build. So we try to find the common ground in those issues as we advocate for the industry itself.
If you have hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the islands every year, or maybe billions, that money is basically going up in smoke. But if we had our own sources here, even if our own sources were comparable in cost to oil, all that money could circulate within our economy, improve people's lives. But if those resources that we develop are cheaper than oil, that's a double bonus for us.
I think it's crucial that the educational system gets involved in training manpower for a trend that is no longer in the future. It's literally in our present. We have the highest utility rates in the nation. We probably have the most abundance of local resource. So why not go after it?
I think you need to start with schools in teaching young students the importance of sustainability and what happens if you don't do that, because I think that that's not a part of the regular program of the schools here in Hawaii, and change starts with the youth, so that would be a really good place to start.
In Hawaii, we are isolated in the middle of the ocean, so our fossil fuel dependence is very high. So I think also it's important to research and look at sustainable issues and renewable energy sources for Hawaii itself. Well, statistically, buildings use 40% of the energy use. So I feel that that's probably the first place that we can look at to reduce our energy demands as well as create renewable energy sources. I didn't get into architecture because of the role of sustainability that architecture plays, but now that I've been in the school for 6 years and now a graduate student, I believe that that is now becoming a focus for a lot of architects, and that is the future of design.
We need to take a human rights-based approach to the issues of development. And that means that we would not only look to protect the human rights of the indigenous peoples who are the resource owners, and that is certainly the case here in Hawaii, but also the ramification for the broader environment. To be socially responsible means that you provide a clean energy product to everyone and in an affordable way, but also that you are mindful of your obligations to protect cultural resources and precious natural resources that are really also the backbone of other industries.
We are going to pay one way or the other. We're going to pay for our energy. And if we stay on oil, we're probably going to end up paying more and we're not going to be able to control it. And if we make a transition to clean energy, we're going to have to make some hard decisions in the near term. But ultimately, I believe it will be a more stable and predictable future.
It seems the dominant issue for most people is the impact of what we're paying individually and as a state economy for our dependence on petroleum. Coming up, we'll hear from 3 people who may not always agree with each other, but they're all very familiar with this idea of how the energy choices we make today will impact our economic future. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's no shortage of policy and statutory framework laying out our goals and visions. More than 30 years ago, we recognized the need for dependable, efficient, and economical energy systems, as well as the need to even out the imbalance of imported energy.
But our early plans were sidetracked when it seemed the price and supply of crude oil had stabilized. We asked 2 local economists and the head of the state energy office about the impact of petroleum dependence on our local economy.
Because there is this relationship between oil and the macroeconomy that specifically it's not so much rising oil prices that sort of has macroeconomic impact per se, but volatile oil prices. It's that sudden onset of rising oil prices that makes it really hard to adjust.
The whole point of volatility is that it can go up or down. To rule out absolutely the possibility that oil prices might actually come down. I mean, we made that mistake before. Volatility per se, I don't think is as worrisome because, and it comes in different forms, as you say. Some of it's just in pricing. Here's a newsflash, commodity prices are volatile. But some of it comes in the real world, so to speak. So I understand all of those risks. It's not clear to me whether the way we insure against those risks is permanently paying more than it seems to me we have to not to use the resources exposed to those risks.
When we do have huge price spikes, whenever there is a massive disruption in oil, and as oil becomes more diminished and in demand in certain areas, we simply will bankrupt our economy. What we noticed during the price spikes that occurred in 2007, 2008, which led to a global downturn, really, of economic activity, during that time, we ended up increasing 3 or 4% of all capital, part of our gross domestic product, went to additional costs of energy, the same units of energy. So that massive amount of money went to no good use.
What about the idea that with indigenous energy sources, we wouldn't be exporting billions of dollars a year to pay for imported oil, even if some of these renewables are initially more expensive than oil?
People need to stop talking about keeping the money in the state. Okay, that's one of these things. It sounds logical, but it's not. Keeping the money in the state is not a good reason to spend more than you need to for something you were already going to get by buying it from somewhere else. With the things we're running out of, because the planet is finite, higher prices stimulate new discovery, substitution, and technological progress. Only what happens with the first version, right, the 1.0 version, is that it's not that good, it's kind of clunky, and it's really expensive. Eventually, you get down to version 16.5, and the thing fast, right? And it's cheap, and it does everything, right? And it multitasks. So that's happening in the renewables or the alternative energy space as we speak, because it wasn't that interesting at $20 a barrel, but it's really interesting at $100 a barrel.
Brubaker takes issue with subsidies for anything other than research and development, and he believes tax credits extended for products such as photovoltaic are unnecessary and unfair.
Poor people shouldn't pay for rich people's stuff, and the second is, you need to be attentive to that when you're designing policy. Why wouldn't you just have an environment in which the guys that want to adopt because it's cheaper and better and allows them to demonstrate their environmental responsibility, go ahead and do it, because they will do it. You don't have to go that far. We're going to get there in due time.
This issue of what it's going to cost to switch to renewable energy is huge, and specifically I like the way you framed the question in terms of what is the baseline. What are you comparing this against? And that's the great unknown, right? If we do nothing, what do we expect to happen? Not just because if you do nothing, that means sort of do nothing from a policy perspective, but we know that people will change, people will adapt. But the question is, do we want them to adapt reactively, or do we want to introduce policy to help them adapt proactively?
Kaufman co-authored a detailed study on the impact of petroleum prices on our local economy that factored in different high and low pricing scenarios. But is Hawaii's goal for energy independence just about the economic impact?
I'd say it's much more than an economic issue. It's an environmental issue, it's a social issue. If the goal was purely economics, I think you'd come to a much different conclusion. But the goal isn't just about economics, it's also about sort of doing our part within the world for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and then of course these sort of long-term cost issues. But to that point, the issue of siting renewable energy is enormous, right? And it's not just people being sort of NIMBY, right, not in my backyard. It's much broader than that. There are real issues that need to be addressed, and renewable energy poses tremendous problems in this way because it's not necessarily always centralized, it could be decentralized. We're dealing with a new paradigm of land use, of how we make decisions at a community level. So, we need to really thoughtfully go through these processes because it isn't just an economic issue.
As administrator for the State Energy Office, Mark Glick is the person to ask if we want to know where we are and how we're doing with our Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative goals and timeline.
We're doing extremely well. Right now, on the energy portfolio standards on our renewable side, when you take out energy efficiency, which under the 2015 rules need to be done, we're almost at 10%. So there's 5% that needs to come from other forms. So obviously there are dockets before the PUC and RFPs by the utility companies to fulfill that need, that demand. And we see real opportunities for those things being decided positively. So we should be on course, high potential of actually meeting these aggressive goals so far. A lot of work to be done, but really we're moving in the right direction. We have 66 projects under development here, renewable energy projects, from just a dozen 2 years ago. Those projects represent over 800 megawatts of power, which is over half of our actual demand. Obviously, all those projects aren't going to be ultimately reach fruition, but it shows that if a large proportion of them really do move forward, we've done a really good job of getting it tracked.
As a state, we've made progress cutting back on the energy we use. Conservation is a significant part of the solution, but are we doing enough? And how can you cut back on your household kilowatt hours and electric bill? Did you know you've already paid for some of the best support and advice available? Stay with us.
Did you ever see these rebate signs in the stores? If you buy CFL or LED light bulbs or an Energy Star appliance, Hawai'i Energy will pay you a rebate. And where does Hawai'i Energy get the money to pay for all these rebates?
As it turns out, the money comes from you. You've already paid for rebates and other resources offered by Hawai'i Energy. It's all part of a ratepayer-funded program used to help all of us reduce Hawaii's total electric energy usage by 4.3 billion kilowatt hours by the year 2030. This reduction plays a key role in meeting the goals of the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative.
We're doing better, but we're not doing nearly as well as we need to. We really have this problem with the oil prices that are very volatile, going up considerably in the last year. And we can't really afford to let that continue without doing something about it. And energy conservation and efficiency is the one single thing that everybody can do about their increasing power bills.
How much do we really save using these CFL or LED bulbs? If you go to the Hawai'i Energy website, there's a way you can calculate your own individual savings. Starling compares the difference in light bulbs to filling up your gas tank. If you were to use a standard incandescent bulb, a fill-up might cost $40. With a CFL, that drops to $10. An LED would bring the cost down to $4. And there's also a program that will help you get rid of a real energy hog, your spare refrigerator.
We now have a program on all islands. You don't even have to buy a new refrigerator. You only have to call us, tell us you've got a clunker that's still cooling beer in the garage, and you would like for us to come pick it up. And we have put together a program that will come out to your house, pick it up, and actually give you a rebate for turning in that clunker refrigerator. The Energy Star appliances, quite a few of them, we have rebates for, and they're standardized, they're on our website. You can call us and we can talk to you about whatever it is that you're looking to purchase, whether it's a washing machine or an air conditioner, a pool pump. Those are big things that use a lot of power, and we have people that just simply put a right-sized pool pump in their pool, and they see a dramatic reduction in the cost of power.
Have you ever received one of these in the mail? There's a test program on Oahu that's expanding to Maui and Hawaii Islands. With complete anonymity, people can see how their energy use compares to others in their neighborhood.
People will want to make changes, and then we give them suggested changes in the letter depending on their particular circumstance to reduce their usage. And then they get these letters periodically, and what we've seen is a statistically significant change in that test group from our control group. These are the guys who don't get any letters.
It seems like there's a lot going on. Not only are we exploring different energy technologies, we need to plan how our infrastructure will change. And we need to find ways to reduce our overall consumption of energy. Starling says these initiatives are needed.
At the end of the day, if we don't have some central ability to pull the pieces together and make them work towards the common goal, we'll never get there. I am convinced of it. There are too many interests out there that would like to go their own way, and we've got to have something bringing it together, either incentives or mandates. We've got to have some way of forcing this down the road, because the people who really understand the energy business understand that we cannot sustain ourselves going down the road the way we have been.
And one more tip. It has to do with something many of us have hooked up to our TVs.
Cable box. Another huge draw of electricity. If you don't use your cable box between 12 o'clock midnight and 6 in the morning, you ought to have a timer on there. When you have multiple cable boxes in your house attached to TVs that have instant on capability, you need to put them on what we call a smart strip, where you plug in the TV, you plug in the cable box, you plug in the other peripherals that you've got, and when you turn off the TV, everything turns off.
Tonight's show clearly illustrates that while we try to make the right decisions today about Hawaii's energy future, we struggle with real challenges right now. Projections indicate the price of crude oil, now over $100 a barrel, will continue to rise in the coming months. Our situation here in Hawaii is unique to our islands and impacts every resident. And the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum website has more information on tonight's topic, as well as links to other websites, including Hawaii Energy, where you can check out the rebates offered and some excellent ideas on how to conserve energy and save money on your electric bill. On behalf of our partner, the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and all of us here at Hawaii News Now, thank you for joining us. I'm Terry Okita. We'll see you soon. Good night.
You know, no one is immune to these rising gas prices. Hawaii News Now, for instance, has about 24 of these news vehicles. We spent $30,000 for gas last year, and we budgeted about $36,000 this year, which is a 20% increase. Live from Kalihi, I'm Terry Okita, Hawaii News Now.
Very informative. Thanks, Terry. Now, of course, you at home have a lot to say about the new state record. You're looking live at our Facebook page with our iPad. Now, we asked, what kind of car do you drive, and how much do you pay for gas?
Yeah, and we've got a lot of comments so far. You know, I spent like more than $70 filling up my gas tank.